Today we are finishing our series on the unity values, and I just have to tell you, every value I come up to, as soon as I get to, I go, oh, this one, I don't really want to do this one. So this time we're doing two at one time, and they are inclusivity and integrity. So what is inclusivity? So on our website, for our purposes, it says we embrace people from all paths with acceptance, love, and open-mindedness, affirming our unity as one. So what is the difference between diversity and inclusivity? So, there's all these classes. Unity has a lot of them on diversity. If you want to do anything, be a licensed teacher, a minister, you got to take some class on diversity. But we're not talking about diversity. We're talking about inclusivity. So what is the best way to describe the difference between the two? So a good way to look at it in diversity is like inviting someone to come to the party. Inclusivity is asking them to dance. It's not a matter of just having certain kinds of people and different people and all of that. It is about seeing people as we are. We say that the Christ is within all of us, which means we have to treat everybody as if they are us, because they are us. And inclusivity, that's what we do. Inclusivity is from the heart. It's from the heart. It's from the soul. Diversity is something that corporations come up with, schools come up with. It's a base of numbers. It's a based on you have to have this, you have to have that, you have to have this and that. And then, okay, we did it. But it doesn't help if you don't treat people as you would like to be treated. If we treat people differently than we are, or differently than we would treat someone else, then we are not practicing inclusivity. We are practicing diversity. And what we're saying is that here at Unity, we practice inclusivity, meaning we are all one. We are all one. And it doesn't matter your age, your race, whatever, even religion. It's interesting because unity is about the fact that we all believe in the same thing, yet different things. You ask 10 people in Unity what they believe about any kind of thing, death, life after death, Jesus, Christ, you name it, you're going to have different answers. You're going to have some people in Unity who are big into Buddhism. You're going to have some people in Unity that grew up Jewish, grew up Catholic. And sometimes I've even been in churches where people still consider they are that, and yet they come to Unity. Because in Unity, we're all about treating each other as one. And it doesn't matter where we go. There are many paths. There is one God. And we accept the fact that there are many paths, whether it be Buddhism, whatever, with similarities. I did a series once, and I'd love to do it here, on the similarities between Buddhism and Unity, because there's a lot. There are a lot of things, and yet it seems like it's so different. So in inclusivity, we see the similarities, we see how we're all one, and we treat people that way. So what about integrity? So I've gone to a lot of workshops, and there's this popular thing that they do in workshops where they give you a 3x5 card, and they tell you to list 6 people or 10 people or whatever that are living or dead that you respect or you think a lot of or whatever. And then they usually have you limited to the top 3. And then they ask you, what are the characteristics of these people, why you look up to them, why you honor them, why you think that they're so important. And for me, the one word that always comes up on every single list is integrity. In fact, that's a word that comes up. If I was to write my epitaph, I would like to say that people said I was in integrity. Because to me, integrity says so much about who we are. So integrity, the meaning that we have on our website is, We promote community well-being through respectful, authentic, and spiritually aligned communication and stewardship. But that sounds really, well, what does that mean? I mean, what does it mean in our lives? You know, if we don't use these principles in our lives, they are of no use to us. You know, it used to be called Unity was the School of Practical Christianity. And now we say it's the School of Practical Spirituality. But both times that word practical is there because, folks, if we can't take what we hear about here out in the world and make the world a better place, then what are we doing? You know, when we commit to being a member here, we commit to this. Meanwhile, the difference, you know the difference between commitment and involvement? So in a breakfast of bacon and eggs, the chicken was involved and the pig was committed. So when we go to that level, it's a much different level. So this integrity, why is it so important? Well, I found two different lists about what integrity is. One said honesty, consistency, reliability, strong moral principles, accountability, and authenticity. And another one said honesty, trust, fairness, respect, and responsibility. So honesty is an important thing, consistency, accountability, all of that. But what it really means is being true to yourself. You know, you sang about being as God created us to be. Are we being true to ourselves? Are we being true to the person that God created us to be? And that means that we have to be true to ourselves sometimes in difficult situations. So one of my favorite stories about someone who was in integrity is the story of Joseph from the Old Testament. So I don't know if you know the story of Joseph. Joseph was the 11th child of Jacob and his favorite child because Joseph's mother was Rachel, and Rachel was Jacob's favorite wife. You see, back then they had a lot of wives. So he loved Joseph, and he got him this coat of many colors, this beautiful coat. And his brothers were really not very happy. Well, he has that. And then Joseph was this person who had these dreams. And he made a big mistake of telling his brothers that he had a dream where one day his brothers were going to come to him and bow down to him. And that really got him pissed. Now they were really angry. He got the coat. They're going to be bowing down to him. Their father likes him better. They do not like Joseph. So they decide they're going to show Joseph. They're going to take Joseph. They're going to take him out into the wilderness. They're going to drop him into a pit, take his coat, bring the coat back to their father and say, God, you wouldn't believe what happened. The animals got him, whatever. And his father's going to love them more. So they drop him in the pit. What happened was he got sold. He got sold to an Egyptian, and he goes to Egypt, and he works for this very wealthy man. And then the man's wife decides she doesn't like Joseph because she made a pass at Joseph. And Joseph, being a man of integrity, she was married, did not do anything. So she really got angry, and you don't want a scorned woman against you. So she goes and makes up this whole story about him, and he gets thrown into jail. Now he's in jail, but he has these dreams. And so one day he has this dream about that Egypt is going to have 7 years of abundance and then 7 years of famine. And one of the guards hears about this, and he tells the Pharaoh, and he goes in front of the Pharaoh, and he tells the Pharaoh this dream he has. And because people have seen that his dreams come true, the Pharaoh decides, okay, so during those 7 years, they had 7 years of prosperity, and the Pharaoh took everything, and instead of squandering it, saved it. So when the time came for the 7 years of famine and all the country, not just Egypt, but all the area around them, people were starving, there was no food, there was nothing. Egypt had plenty. And the Pharaoh made Joseph a big shot. They gave him big responsibility. Now, his brothers, who are living in their land, they're starving, they're having a problem. They see Egypt is doing really well, so they decide to go to Egypt to beg for some kind of help, not knowing it's Joseph, because to them, Joseph is dead. So they go in front of the big guy, who happens to be Joseph, and they get on their knees and they pray and beg for him to be generous. Now, they don't realize it's Joseph right away. Joseph realizes it's his brothers. Now, a lot of people would sit there going, I can finally get back at these guys. They have been bugging me all my life. Now they want something from me. Right. They're not getting it. But Joseph, being a man of integrity in everything he did, tells them that who he is, and he gives them food and everything that they need. Now, how many times, have people had someone that they've been angry with and they come to them and they ask for something and you go, yeah, right, you're never going to get that. So that's a man of integrity. And I love the story of Joseph because he was just a boy, really. He wasn't anybody. He didn't have any big education or anything else, but he was true to who he was. And being true to who we are is that no matter what happens, we don't do something that is out of principle for us. And this isn't easy, folks, in this world. It isn't easy because sometimes the world asks you to maybe do something you shouldn't do. And you can either go along with it and make everybody happy, or you can do what you feel you should do. Now, we have to ask ourselves, are we people of integrity? And sometimes that comes up. Like people will ask me, well, what do you believe? What's your religion? Where do you go to church? Whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I want to say unity and sometimes shout it out. And other times I'm like, oh, then come all the questions. What is unity? Do you believe in this? Do you believe in that? What happens after you die? What, blah, 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 blah. And I have to be able to say what I believe. And it may not be what someone else believes, but we have the right to believe what we believe. It kind of works with inclusivity. So one years ago, I was living in Florida. I have to remember where I was living. I've lived in a lot of places. And I had come up, I was going to a Buddhist center for a month-long retreat. So I went to my sister's house, the one who lives in Connecticut, and we're having a dinner, and everybody is around the table. And one of my brother-in-laws say to me, "You're doing what? You're going to be in silence for a month? You're going into some Buddhist place? It's like bad enough. You were brought up Jewish, you became an atheist, then you went to unity, now you're going to Buddhism. What are you going to do next?" And so he said something to me like, "What are you, crazy? Why are you doing that?" and all this. And I thought, I just said to him, I don't ask you to agree with what I believe in. I just ask you to respect what I believe in. And I will respect what you believe in. Because that's what integrity is about. It is not about changing what we believe. It is about being true to what we believe and allowing others to believe what they believe, which is also like inclusivity. Because when you see everybody as the Christ, when you see everybody as God within them, there is no difference. There isn't one thing that is better than another. It is whatever works for you. It is whatever you need to be true to who you are. When we're true to who we are, everything else works out. And so we have to remember that, because I may be grateful for one thing and someone else may not see that as gratitude. I may see something as a gift and someone else may think, "What are you, crazy? Why do you see that as a gift?" But we are who we are. See, God created each one of us in its image and likeness, and there is the Christ light within each one of us, but we are also individuals. Every single one of us, like the snowflakes, there are no two snowflakes that are the same. There are no two people that are exactly the same, including identical twins. There are no two people that everything about them is exactly the same. The way they think, the way they believe, the way they act, the way they respond. And that is because God manifests itself differently in each one of us. So for us to be inclusive and integrity, we have to allow our differences to be what they are, yet see the similarities. Because when you look at snowflakes, they all look the same when they're falling down. It isn't until you take it under a microscope that you see the difference. So that's what we are, all human beings. We all have the same God within us, but we each appear differently. So my suggestion is that you really look deep within and ask yourself, are you being true to yourself? Are you being in integrity with who you are? And can you do that no matter what happens in this world? No matter what someone says to you, no matter what somebody asks you to do it. You know, it's really hard for young people because, you know, I remember when I was a kid, oh my God, you know, if you're different, then something is wrong with you. But yet some people just develop naturally. They develop this idea that they are okay exactly who they are. So some of us have to develop later than others. So I invite you to close your eyes for a moment and think about this. Who did God create you to be? Not what you're going to do as far as your occupation. That may be part of it. But who were you created to be? And how does that look in the world today? How does that look the way you deal with people? The way you have your relationship with God? The way you pray? The way you are of service in this world? The way you greet somebody? The way you listen when someone talks? God created each one of us as perfect. How that perfection shows up in this world is our decision. Are we kind? Are we compassionate? Are we loving? Are we responsible? How do we treat other people? When you look into another person's eyes, what do you see? Do you see God? Or do you see the color of their eyes, the color of their skin, the color of their hair, their age? We each decide how we're going to be in this world. And if we can say that we're people who are in integrity, I believe then we are truly living this life the way God intended us to live it. Maybe not perfect, but being the best that we could be as we are, as we were created, and as God has willed for us. So we thank you, God. We thank you for all our good points and all of our shortcomings, all the areas we're working on and all the areas we do pretty good at. But we never give up knowing the truth. You are within us, we are within you, and we are all one. And so it is. Amen.